there's a demand out there, and it's about balancing that patience, that vision, and kind of making sure that intellectually, yeah, I've got the integrity to make the decision that's going to be right for the longer term as well as the short term.
Welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by Netsertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. Netsertive's Madeleine talked shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Franchise Marketing. I'm your host, Madeleine Zook with Netsertive, and today we've got Geraldine from IKidsU. Geraldine, thank you for joining us.
Such a pleasure, Maddie. Thank you so much for having me and our brand on.
So Geraldine is the CEO of IKidsU, and we talked, I don't think we rescheduled this a million times, but we talked like maybe a month or so ago, and the way that you were able to phrase the industry, and especially in terms of technology, I think is going to interest a lot of people. So why don't we just start off with who you are, how'd you get into franchising? I'm sure it was not a linear journey, so take me through that.
It never is it? So thank you again. My name is Geraldine Smythe. I'm the CEO and president of IKidsU Franchise. I am not the founder, just want to always make that clear. We actually acquired the brand in April of 2021 from the very clever founders who had been doing IKidsU in Houston since 2007. And we are a one-stop after-school shop. So basically, what does that mean? We are a few different things all under one umbrella as a very convenient service for elementary schools and principals and families. So what we offer is licensed aftercare, meaning from when the school bell rings at the end of the day on an elementary campus until parents are done with work. We provide aftercare for children, but we're also a lot more than that. We provide over a dozen different enrichment classes, and for those of the audience who have children, they're probably very familiar with bringing kids around to music lessons and karate lessons and art lessons and all kinds of other lessons. Well, we are very convenient in that we offer all of that under the one roof at the school. So there's no transportation involved. Kids can sign up for a variety of classes right on their campus right after school. It's very safe. That's our priority. And then, of course, there's learning and fun. We also do one-on-ones. So we have a third and a fourth service of tutoring, as well as private music lessons. So we really kind of become the comprehensive but flexible after-school enrichment provider and one-stop shop, as we say, for schools.
Which I think is incredible because I have 3 and the oldest is 6. So I'm like deep in it right now.
Yes,
and
you are.
even with summer break, and like I was always like a champion of like team kids, summer, I hate school, let's have 4-day school week. Now I'm like, why do they need summer break? I don't understand. Get in school. Like, what are parents supposed to do? And like thankfully my husband and I are in franchising, but school gets out at like 2:30, and I'm like, there's a very big delta between 2:30 and 5:30, and especially that time for what the kids need, because it's not just like a lot of times in the morning they'll wake up, they'll watch cartoons, they'll eat. No, like 2:30 to 5:30 is like full energy. I want snacks, entertain me, like the whole 9 yards. So obviously the demand in this industry is incredible. Now, in terms of ages, what ages do you guys offer?
Yes, we offer starting really age 4, technically, although we do have one school right now with 3-year-olds. That was a special deal for them. But we go up through elementary age, and we're just in Texas right now, but that will differ. I know in the Northeast, some schools go to 11 and some go to age 12. So we really go up to whenever the last year of elementary school is.
And do you guys have standalone buildings, or do you go into schools and provide the services there?
Great question. No, we do not. So we're really a wonderful model for new franchisees looking for something that is home based because they can run this business from home, and we partner directly with the schools.
Oh,
We
that's
just
great.
send out our teachers to the campuses. So we use the public school buildings or the private school buildings and their classrooms in the after school hours.
Yeah, that's even more incredible because you said so. My kids are starting to do activities, and I'm came from a purely like sports family. So now I'm realizing the pain of transportation and the waiting the hours and this and that, and even the transportation from school to aftercare if it's of a different building
Oh yeah.
is a logistic all in and of itself. So the fact that you're able to go into a facility that they're already at, they're already trusted, already
Yep.
has their security protocols, seems like a great kind of streamlined way to get into this business. Now,
That's it.
you mentioned that you took over for iKidsU. How did you find that? What was the process like, and why did you decide children aftercare? That's where I'm putting all my energy and focus.
Yeah, yeah, great question. Well, we're kind of serial entrepreneurs, my husband and I, but we have been in franchising for 8 years, from 2005 to 2012. We had owned a couple franchise units in Austin, where we're located, for Abracadoodle art education. We absolutely love that. We grew that to be one of the largest businesses in the international system. But the model itself was a little bit, I guess, we kind of maxed out the model for ourselves, our own ambitions. Um, and so we ended up selling. And then I spent the next 8 years or so kind of doing some consulting, both in franchising as well as for software system uh, uh, technology companies. And we also went overseas. I'm from Ireland originally and moved back to Texas in 2019, just before the pandemic, when I was about to open up a travel uh, company for students. And that was a terrible idea with a pandemic. So
Right. So, and then how did you come to find iKidsU?
So with iKidsU, I ended up looking at that point for let me not do another startup because obviously there's a pandemic going on. Let me see if there's something out there that is, an essential service, maybe a resilient service, something that has to keep going no matter what.
Right.
And it occurred to me that if I could look back in my education roots and just make sure there was something there, that there was a real service that needed to be provided with all families kind of in lockdown and parents just really struggling to try to hold it down with between jobs and childcare and that kind of thing. So I went looking. I discovered this business actually by looking through some just state lists of education businesses. And something was in there when I scratched the surface. I'm like, hold on a second. They're franchising, but they've stalled the franchising for some reason. Maybe it's the pandemic. They're small, but they're Texas based. They're just down the street from us, proverbially speaking. They were in Houston, we were in Austin. Let me go see what I can find out. And, long story short, meeting of the minds, they really created a very good program. It improved upon some of the factors that we kept hitting kind of our head against the ceiling on with the model with Abracadoodle, which I absolutely loved and taught us everything, but we just wanted to grow further, and there wasn't really that ability to offer all these other kinds of enrichments and licensed childcare and all this extra stuff, and on a flexible scale that iKids could do. So we struck a deal, and they recognized in us that we were great partners with franchising experience, which they really hadn't had. And so they were struggling to kind of figure out how to build a franchisable model. And yet we knew that they had a model that franchising would absolutely fall in love with. So that's what we've really spent the last 2 years rebuilding and reworking on together.
See, I'm really glad that we connected because first of all, usually the life cycle goes, franchisor, franchisee, independent, or independent franchisee, franchisor. But yours was kind of like franchisee was going to go independent. Then you're like, actually, let's not open a travel business in the pandemic. So let me try the franchisor route,
Mhm.
which I think is really great because you get all of the different kind of experiences and pain points from each. Now, what I also am really glad to talk to you about is you found this brand that was trying to franchise. You said, what, I have experience, I like this model, I have experience with it, I have a background in it. But instead of just taking it and going, okay, lawyers, FDD, franchise development, go, you
Yep.
said, I don't care how long it takes, we're going to restructure it, rebrand it, rebuild it so that it is something that can be successful in a way that exceeds what you had already had with Abracadoodle. So talk to me about that process because it is very difficult for people to make that time and money investment into really rebuilding a brand, especially if you already have, founding fathers, if you will, that this is their baby per se. So what was that process like, and what were your first big have to do's?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we're still in that process. And, if the founders are listening, they're probably like, still chewing their fingernails, going, when are we going to get out of the gate? Come on, come on. But the truth of the matter is, we are actually out of the gate in a big way. Our very first order of business, Maddie, was to reprove the model. We were taking on a brand new business. Frankly, I didn't, buying a business, acquiring a business that already exists, there's only so much due diligence you can do at the end of the day. And so
Sure.
until you cross the line and acquired the thing, you don't really know what you have, and we all make assumptions, right? I also knew that I was going to be making tons of assumptions based on past brand experiences that were probably different, and they were going to surprise me what those differences were. So it was exceedingly important to open up with a new learning, open mindset,
Mhm.
and approach this from the ground up. So what the first order of business was to go ahead and take a month or two to kind of decompress from the purchase and really try to get as much learning in as possible in theory, and then try to hit the ground running by opening up our first corporate run territory. So we did that. We opened in August of 2021 with one school that I managed to get 4 weeks earlier. Amazingly, I've never rocked up to a school and had a principal in the span of 3 minutes tell me yes. So I almost like dropped my bag on her front step of the school at that time because it's usually a fairly lengthy process. But
Sure.
because it was the pandemic, she had just had a couple of programs drop out and she needed aftercare support. So she said, "You're here, you got the job,"
Hmm.
which was amazing. So we started August 2021 with 20 kids. Actually, I think it was 17 kids, me and one teacher. We went into that school, and we spent the next 8 weeks kind of just getting things rolling, adding a few more kids with each week that went by, getting the word out. And after 8 weeks, I brought in my partner, who is uh, she's the she is a co-owner, minority owner in the corporate run territory,
Hmm.
and she's the one with the education credentials. So, as a licensed facility, we needed to have that ability to have somebody with that background come in and be able to run. And so she took over running that territory for us for the next 18 months, actually. Um, so that was the very first order of business. But on the franchising side, I had a really very important job I had to do. Up until that moment, they had been doing everything manually, meaning that when a parent wanted to register, they would either call the office or they would fill out a very lengthy piece of paper and then call the office and ask, you know, 30 to 45 minutes worth of questions,
Oh boy.
ask the registrar to type in all of that information into the registrar's, uh, you know, onboarding software, whatever they had at the time, and then run a manual payment through a credit card processing piece of equipment or something like that. It was a very clunky process. And so I knew that that's a massive bottleneck in the day and age when, parents are in their 20s, they're on their cell phones, they want to just with a couple clicks of buttons buy something, including childcare. We needed to fix that fast. So that was really what I spent from April to July kind of working on to try to get that system going before we even opened our corporate office in August. And so we tested that with our first dozen or so students, and it rolled out amazingly, almost to plan, which almost never happens with software, but it was great. It was great. So our partners were very amenable to adding some extra development pieces there that made it a kind of a proprietary system for us. But they're wonderful. We're still with them, and we're growing together as far as that goes. That actually transformed our franchisees' business, who did not want to get onto that system, mind you, because they were already mad. There was a new franchisor in town, right? And pandemic and trauma and all of that. And like, what do you mean we're changing gears? And who is this person? And how are they going to help us? They're just going to ask us for more. But when they finally realized and we started to show them the data about how we were registering people really automatically and cutting literally 20 hours a week out of that one person's job because of the lever of software, they started to really pay attention. So they launched that software themselves that next spring in time for this past school year. And they saw a 10x in 1 month jump in income. And then they were believers.
Yeah, right.
So,
Proof of the
yeah,
pudding.
it was amazing. And it wasn't just about the income. More importantly, it was about the poor co-owner we had one franchisee. The poor co-owner was, just pulling her hair out with obviously she couldn't really register any more than about 200 kids every year because it
Right.
was taking all of her time just to do that with this manual process.
I can't even. I get mad if like Amazon sends me like a confirm your address button, let alone I cannot imagine registering one of my kids, let alone three of my kids up for something for 45 minutes. Even when people call me and say, "Oh, I need your credit card over the phone," I'm like, "Really? Can I just send you a picture of
Right,
it?"
right.
And I think that that's a true testament to a lot of people because they are so eager to get started, to make money, maybe they need investment, whatever, what have you, is that they say, we'll start it this way and we'll do it later. We'll build it later. When really, one, that can really hinder your business. And two, it's a lot harder to also do it later. Thankfully, you only had the one franchisee that you had to re-enroll onto a new software.
Yep,
But thinking about doing that for 20, 30, 40 franchisees is
crazy.
definitely a huge undertaking. So taking that time to do it ahead of time. And also, I really like that you pointed out because I just did a kind of a content series that's called Let's Be Frank, which is just like being real blunt about franchising. And I just did one about acquisitions. And I think that what you said about there's only so much due diligence you can do. And then the rest you're going to assume. But I think you made a very great point by also understanding that your assumptions are probably going to be false or
Yep,
fall, in a different direction. So understanding that that is going to happen, and knowing kind of there may not be anything you can plan for, but plan for the unknown is a very important piece of this, and it also is a true testament to that. If you're going to do an acquisition, it's going to take time. There
yep,
are a lot of pieces that I think a lot of people think acquisition, instant cash, money, or a new project, and it's all fun and games until shit hits the fan. But like
yep,
understanding that shit is going to hit the fan and to be
yep,
ready for it
yep.
is important. And so now, how many locations do you have now, corporate and franchisee?
So yes. Um, we have the original Houston location
Sure.
which is kind of operating independently. It's actually not technically part of the franchise system, but it runs the same programming. It does everything that it's
Sure.
always done. Then we have our Austin franchisee, and we have ourselves as neighbors. Just so happened that they were in Austin as well, so it's been kind of nice that way. And that's it. I'm talking to a few people here and there, but we're not actively marketing. We have our FDD. We're ready to sell in the sense that we have the basics in place,
Sure.
but there's a lot more that I want to put in foundationally just to make sure everything is, you know, really smooth sailing for a new person. This is a quite a big business potential. It's actually, fix the cash register was the first order of business for our first franchise, right? A
Right.
franchise customer, and the next order of business is make sure that the service that we offer is has a floor in terms of what the quality can never get below, and
Right.
that's what we're working on right now. And so that entails putting additional systems in place. We're also reviewing our curriculum and streamlining that to make sure that even brand new teaching staff, who for some this is going to be their very first opportunity to teach children in a
Hmm.
classroom environment as opposed to just being babysitters and having familiarity with kids. It's a very different set of expectations. We don't want to add the extra, we're offering a ton of different specialty classes. We are not hiring certified teachers who have years and years of experience. That's just not the reality of this. It tends to be, very bright, very energetic, and eager to learn college students and on up. And so those are folks who don't necessarily have lots of professional experience, but they have all the energy and willpower to be able to follow a good system, provided the system is there. So that's really what we're putting in place right now, is just absolutely going through with a fine-tooth comb and making sure those systems are all in place. And then testing those and verifying those, both in our own corporate location, and then once we feel good about that, we're rolling that out to Austin, and if Houston wants to take that on as well too, they're welcome to it. So that's really moving into year 3 now. We have improved curriculum. We have improved a lot of our technologies. The I for iKids, it used to be that this started out like a computer class for kids, and then they grew into offering Spanish and drama and art and all this other stuff. And they kind of got away from, in our programming, screen time for kids, because we really want kids to play and make friends and learn the social emotional lessons and not just be stuck behind a screen. So in a way, we're coming full circle. The I in iKids is almost now more at the back end for the owners. It's about leveraging technology to make sure that the owners have a sustainable business, that they don't have to hire 50 people to run. They can hire 8 or 6 core people in their head office and run, potentially a multi-million dollar business for themselves with just a handful of people that they really like in their office, and then a field staff of teachers, however many they need. They can just accordion that up depending on how many school sites they get, right? Or shrink depending on how many maybe disappear because there's natural attrition sometimes, right?
Sure. I love that you have changed the I from, like computer coding to really having it more of a marketing piece for potential franchisees, because I don't think we see a lot of that in branding. And it's so important, especially when people are pouring their life savings and their passions into buying into a system like this. And, I love that you said, we want to get kids away from screen time, because I have kids that you turn a screen on and they're like locked in, right? So we have to have
Mm-hmm.
very, strict parameters about it. And I
Yep.
have a 6, almost 7 year old who's starting to kind of have, a mind of his own. He's starting to get the wit and the logic with me. So I'm telling him, you can have more screen time, but you need to learn how to act and socialize like a big kid first. And that
Yep.
means you're greeting me and your dad. You're, when we're at a neighbor's house, you're asking our neighbors how their day was, how was
Yep.
work, what are you working on? And as soon as you can show me that you can start conversing and interacting in a more grown-up manner, then maybe we can increase the screen time. So I love that.
Awesome. 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 Sounds like if we had another job, we would be hiring you in a heartbeat to train everybody.
Listen, but I am not the gentle parent. I have a neighbor who, please get off the swing set. Get off the swing set. I'm like, get off the swing set, or there's
No.
a price to pay. Like, tell me what. My kids know the ropes at this point. Um, so, and for our listeners out there, especially for emerging brands, I mean, you have the unique talent and perspective of having come from a franchise system, understanding processes, having that entrepreneur mindset. And I think a lot of times franchisors or, first time franchisees, they don't have that. So, I definitely recommend reaching out to people who have been through it, because if you had not had your experience with Abracadoodle, you wouldn't understand as in depth the importance of needing that foundation and that support,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
realizing that if you roll out without the support, it could be detrimental to your brand and business moving forward. So, that's just kind of a quick tip I wanted to add there. And then my next, I know we're coming up on time. I feel like I could talk to you forever about this. But my next question is for people wondering, okay, well, that's great. I wish I could do that. I wish I had, the financial investment or whatever it is to wait 3 years. What is your advice if someone approached you and said, I need those franchise fees. I need to start collecting royalties. How would you coach them through that process, knowing that they need what you're doing, but may not have the time or the investment to wait?
Sure, sure. It's a juggling act, right? I mean, you're constantly having to balance short-term, mid-term, and long-term needs. And if you can just I recently started using this phrase on myself about being just uh, intellectually hyper honest, right?
I like that.
And it's like, I can fool myself all day long, but if I don't stop and slow down to really think through the consequences of each decision, I mean, now there's hundreds of people. 2 years ago it was just me and my husband and my kid who were involved in this. Okay, we acquired the one, actually it was two franchises at the time. Unfortunately, we had to terminate one for non-performance, but um, you know, there are now hundreds of people depending on my decisions. Next year, there might be thousands if we play our cards right, right? So, I mean, if I am not hyper honest with myself about the consequences of every financial decision that we're making. And by the way, I recently hired a CFO because I got to the end of my ability to be able to manage on the financial side. I'm out of my depth. So that's also an important piece of this, right? Like, I'm only one human, and I have to surround myself by people who are actually better at almost everything than I am, right? But they have to be my good counsel in each of the departments. And if I am not humble enough to do that, and if I am not taking into account those pieces, the consequences are devastating, first of all, for the immediate people in my surroundings, but I'm never going to get past this point to get to the vision, to get to the tens of thousands of kids or the 100,000 kids, if I am not hyper vigilant with how I'm thinking about things, right? It's just, it is a matter of just being hyper honest about that, I think. And, it isn't easy, but then once you are, things start to unfold. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt right now of one of the courses I had to do. I was joking this morning with everybody. This is my workout t-shirt, but before it was kind of my mantra. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a money bag on it and it's let it flow. It was a business credit workshop I did because I needed to figure out a bridge loan in the early days. It was about 7 or 8 months into this thing, and I had to come up with the money to pay my partner, and we'd run out of money. I needed a bridge loan and I needed to figure it out fast. So, you know, it's not like I had people throwing money at me because there wasn't really much activity going on relative
Sure.
but 2 months later, I already knew we were gonna do really well. Little did I know that our franchisee was gonna 10x, but we've been doubling almost every 2 months. I mean, so it's been kind of crazy. We're about to open up. We actually just doubled our business as of yesterday as well too, with new schools.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And this is just the one local business, right? So there's a demand out there, and it's about balancing that patience, that vision, and kind of making sure that intellectually, yeah, I've got the integrity to make the decision that's going to be right for the longer term as well as the short term. It's that's not an easy answer, right? I can keep rambling on around that answer because it's not going to answer everybody's question, but
No, I like that. And I think everyone to some degree has some level of imposter syndrome, have some level of, marketing themselves and, packaging things up nicely, even when it comes to your family members, your kids, your husband, whoever it may be. But when it comes to yourself, you are the real true critic of yourself. You're the one that understands your thinking, your emotions in and out. So to be able to be, as you said, intellectually hyper honest, not hyper focused, hyper honest is a really great way to have kind of gut check your decisions, because like you said, your decisions are impacting hundreds if not thousands of people. And even if you weren't the CEO and having a direct impact on thousands, everyone's decisions out there have a trickle down effect, in other people's lives. So I think that that's really great advice. And Geraldine, my last two-part question that I never prep people for because I like it on the fly is, if you had one piece of advice to give to a franchisee, what would it be? And if you had a piece of advice to give to a franchisor, what would that be?
okay, great. So I think for the franchisee, um, yeah, I think for the franchisee, it's going to be do the homework up front, but ultimately go with your gut.
I love it. I love
Um, follow the heart as well. Make that balance. It's
it.
really important because you, you, I had the option to go with a computer company. Ironically, now I'm with a company called iKids, which started as a computer company, right? But is much more than that now. But I chose the art company because it just sang to me before as a franchisee. It was like I have a big fun quotient that I need to fill in my life, and that just felt more fun, especially when I was going to physical therapy for carpal tunnel at the time because I had been on a computer as an adult too long,
So long,
right?
yeah.
So I went with even though the business model maybe made sense for both, it was like I went with the heart in the end, and I think, but I did the due diligence on both. So I think it's really important to do that. I think for the franchisor. Um, Let me think about that for just a second.
I've had advice from all the way from don't do it, just kidding, kind of.
Yeah, again, it's sort of similar advice, right? But no, I mean, I think the intellectually hyper honest thing
Hmm.
probably is even more important for franchisors. I know that there's a lot of really wonderful partners coming in now with venture capital and all kinds of big paychecks to help franchisors who've really worked hard over the years to build amazing brands and experiences for people, owners all the way down to their consumers. And I do think it's just really important. Sometimes there's a season for everything, right?
Hmm.
And just to be really, really honest with yourself about what uh, franchising is a full contact sport. You know, you've got to have 100% energy, and if you only know that's finite for 8 years, then don't sign a deal for 10. You know,
Right,
um,
right.
and don't wing it because other people are depending on you. It is a sport. It's a team sport. And I think that's the other piece about that. It's a team sport. I think a lot of people miss that part. I think that's what drew me back in after 8 years was like, I really miss this environment. It's just so awesome. It's so unique in business. And, whether you're a franchisor at the end of your tenure or you're at the beginning of your tenure, I think it's just really important to kind of know thyself and, just get ready for the full contact, and if you can't, don't do it because it's not going to be fair to you or anyone, right?
Oh my gosh, Geraldine, I absolutely adore that. I'm getting a whole bunch of gear made up that just says franchising is a full contact sport. Fun fact, played professional basketball after college and then got to the point where I was like, physically, I could still go overseas and play professionally, or I could maybe gut check and go into franchising. And I started my whole team mentality with franchising, thankfully. So, I love the team aspect. I love the contact aspect. And also, to your point, doing as much as you can and, being honest with yourself. So I think that this was such an advice-filled episode. We might have to have another one soon. But thank you so much for coming on. Geraldine, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, thank you so much. And this was really delightful. Thank you, Maddie. I'm so glad that we pushed through and we're able to make it work. But people can find us. We are hopeful to start really in earnest franchising for 2024. They can find us all about our programming at www.ikidsu.com, the letter U, ikidsu.com, or ikidsufranchise.com for the franchising opportunity. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, coming to a school near you, franchising parents, there is relief on the way. Thanks, Geraldine. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by Netsertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netsertive.com.